My man, Jack, thank you so much for coming on the Winners Paradigm podcast, brother. It's an honor because we got connected through a mutual friend. And I was like, man, you're good people. So thanks for being flexible because I know life happened. We got a lot going on. So I appreciate you for making it happen, brother. Before I get ahead of myself, would you mind giving us a brief intro, who you are, what you're passionate about today, brother?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for this. This has been something that I've been so psyched about. Our buddy Jesse kind of connected us, and it's just been I'm so psyched for this. So I'm an online fitness coach. I do it full time. It's like the coolest thing absolutely ever. So I was a full time engineer for about 2.5 years, and then I've been doing coaching like on the side for two like pretty much the entire time during that, and then good old corporate. I got actually laid off like 6 months ago, and then I've been doing this full time, and it's been the biggest coolest thing ever, and it's been doing well. And my biggest passion is genuinely just helping people. So yeah.
Boom. Let's start there, brother.
Boom.
One thing I love about your content is just when you start talking about form and you're explaining the different movements that people are working through. When it comes to those points, because those are things that aren't taught. Those are things that have been trial and error. Those
Yes.
are things of where you've learned your craft. How important was it for you to just get immersed with knowing exactly what to do, but then also knowing the practical application, of, hey, what do we actually need to do? Because I know right now, a lot of things what people do is decide like, oh, they're going to do all these movements, but at the same time, they're not attacking it effectively on what they could be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it just saves you time too. I mean, like so the reason why I like originally went down this route of the way I train, because I just kept getting injured like a couple times. Like just when you start lifting, it's just the idea of like I want to lift heavier, I want to keep pushing, I want to whatever. So like that ego lifting kind of took into play, and then you just get random tweaks, feeling like crap. You're really sore in the places you probably shouldn't be. Just all that jazz, and it kind of that's when you are progressing and you like want to see results, like there's a couple things that can stop you. One is you're sick, another is you get hurt, and the other one is just life, right? So like I just kept getting hurt for no reason at all. And I was like, what is going on? So I had to take a step back and like really dig deep and like just look at more science based and look more towards just like the efficiency of a rep and the efficiency of a movement rather than just doing it for the sake of doing it. Cause like you're just told, oh, do a lat pull down because that hits your back, right? You just do that, or you just do bench press because that's what everyone's told to do to build your chest, whatever. It's like, no, it's like, why are you doing that? What is it hitting? Make sure your form is good. So when I started breaking it down like that, one, obviously the ego would throw out the window. So like, your weight drops significantly. But like, I just never get injured and I feel so good all the time. And I've seen way more growth doing it this way than like previously, where it's like you're controlling the weight as often as possible through the full range of motion. Like, I mean, dude, I was just seeing you like rep around 100 pounds on shoulder press in your story yesterday. I'm like, dude, his range of motion is unreal. So it's just like, just making sure that that is like a huge focus, I think is absolutely key. And so that's kind of like what I tell my clients and like basically what I put out to the world is like, listen, like, if this is for longevity, if you want to feel good, then you need to be training smart and with efficiency rather than just like moving weight for the sake of quote unquote moving it, right? So it's like the idea of this guy, his name's hypertrophy coach, he popularized this thing called the circle method, which is kind of what I base everything on. Where essentially you look at a rep as a full circle, okay? And so the eccentric or the lowering, let's say we're doing a push movement. The lowering of the weight is one half the circle, and then the pressing of the weight is the other half. At any point in time in that rep or that circle, you lose tension, fling it around, or just basically not being a purposeful with the rep, you essentially part of that circle just disappears, and so your rep is basically not as efficient. So like that's what I kind of adapted like 2 or 3 years ago, or 2 years ago more or less. And holy shit, man, it's like everything starts feeling better. Everything like the growth starts happening, and really focusing on the stretch because a lot of people forget about the stretch, and that's where a lot of the growth comes from is that stretch, especially with something like back movements and chest movements and all that jazz. So I know there's a lot of blabber and stuff, but yeah, that's like my methodology behind it.
No,
Yeah.
I personally love it because, like I said, I had a lot of injuries from when I was in the Marine Corps, and that was something I had bad shoulders, so I used to separate them
Yeah.
anytime. And I noticed for me, because I stopped barbell bench pressing for 2.5 years because I just felt like every single time I went heavy, one of my shoulders would slip out, and then it would be
Yeah.
unproductive. And it was something where it like continually hurt. Even now, being at a controlled rate to where it's like I can lift a lot heavier because I've worked on the mechanics, my technique. I noticed with my shoulders, it's the first thing. And it was funny because we're mentioning that, proper form, leading from example. That
Yeah.
happened to me the other day. A D1 football player came up to me in the gym because I put 315 and I did it twice and I was pissed off because I was like, fuck, I could have did more. And then I went to 305 and I did 7 times. And the guy
Can't
came over
lose.
to me, he's like, how did you do that? And I'm like, he's all, dude, you're strong as fuck. And I'm like, bro, it's not even, I know I was mad. I was like, I used to be a lot stronger, but injuries happened.
Yeah.
It was funny because even like his coaches were like, oh, you need to gain weight. You need to do this fast. And it was funny because even you think like college coaches would be teaching them, hey, this is how you should do it slowly. And this is how you should build muscle so you can be an offensive line guy so he can have muscle quicker. And it was like their game plan for him was like fucking mass gainer and all this stuff. So it was funny because even within the gym, we're having this conversation. He's like, really, you think everything's diet? I'm like, bro, you're going to be eating like 4,000 calories and it's going to be these things. And he's like, they haven't told me to eat sweet potatoes and to utilize my carbs. And I'm like, yeah, because it's not, unless you're a trainer, those are the things that aren't going to be taught. You're not going to be taught macros on how to,
Exactly.
do these things. So it's why you need to have a specific coach. And that's what's funny. It's like people don't understand that concept until they're immersed into it like us, with the injuries to where they realize like, bro, I really can't lift the same. And even I ran through that last week. I was doing some deadlifts and like the moment I pulled it up, brother, like my ab, something pulled. And I was just
Oh,
like, bro, all
geez.
I did is just stood up with this weight, like not even anything crazy,
Yeah.
just stood up without a belt, pulled something, and it threw off the whole week because then I had to start lifting with the belt the whole week, which was actually better because then I was like actually, putting more stability in there. So it's funny
Yeah.
'cause those two things, went into exactly on why you train that way. And that's one of my philosophies as well. It's like I love to ask those questions to people on how they're training. Uh,
Yeah.
those are the things you don't, unless somebody's experienced, they're not going to share those things. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And actually, I do want to touch base on when you talked about how bench didn't feel good. There's this like, there's just this idea that everyone should be benching, everyone should be doing these compound movements, whatever. But like, listen, everybody's bodies are super different. And so, like, for example, my body hates squats. Like, essentially loading any weight on my shoulders, my whole freaking nervous system just hates it. I can deadlift a ridiculous amount of weight. I can do decent weight with hack squat or leg press. But the second, like, I'm like loaded onto my spine and it requires that level of stability and stuff, my body just folds. It hates it. So it's like, and same with benching, like some people's shoulders will always flare up. Some people's elbows will always hurt when they bench. So you don't need to be doing those. And I feel like a lot of people just think, oh, hit chest, go bench. It's like, listen, that's not even that efficient of an exercise in the first place. So don't stress about it because your body's not the same as another person. And also, it's got to remember too is like everyone has different leverages. So if someone's lifting a ridiculous amount on squat and you can't, it's a large chance they just have a better body type than you. It's not your fault either. It's just a genetic thing. It sucks. It sucks because genetics play a huge role with especially for compound lifts. But yeah, it's just like don't be discouraged. And you're over here benching 315, and I'll never in my entire life get even close to that because I'm a smaller dude. This is like for me to get that, I would have to eat the most food ever, and it would take forever. So it's like I'm over here like, geez, and you're saying, oh, dude, I can't believe I only benched 315 for almost two. Like that's nuts, dude. Like, come on, dude, you're literally benching most people's deadlifts. Like, think about that.
I,
Like,
I would say that's the humbling part too.
yeah,
Is that, but for me, I've always been around guys that are lifting a lot heavier because
fair.
before when
Yeah,
I
it's all
first started
perspective.
lifting, yeah, it was like football season. And then I was wrestling, and those guys, even when they were cutting weight, were like deadlifting 405. So I always had it in my head to do those things.
Yeah.
And then the military was the same fucking way. It was like to me, it was weird, and we'll touch on this element as well.
Mhm.
To where like you have a lot of time on your hands. I even now, like to not go to the gym just isn't in the cards for me. I'm like, no, it's just
Right.
a daily life, regardless of where we're at, what we're doing. This weekend, we're gonna be with family because we're gonna have my son's birthday party. So I'm literally gonna be doing burpees, 400 burpees,
We
push-ups,
love
all that
it. Nice.
supplementing. And that's not even fun to me because I love lifting weights. And it was funny because it's like those are the things that you're taught along the way. It's like, hey, figuring out for what you're saying. And I love that, especially when you're saying when it comes to your body, people don't understand that. For me, that was one of the things is like I have no cartilage in my right knee, so it's bone on bone. I got a bad back. So with my knees, I feel it's grinding. So like the worst fucking thing right now is hack squats. Like I can do it, but like you'll see me put a plate up and people are like, why aren't you putting more weight? I'm like, bro, I can't. Like my knees just grinding.
It
And
hurts like a
unless
motherfucker. That's why, dude. It's
so I'm
kills,
like,
dude.
for me, you'll see me try to put squats or like focus on my range of motion and slowly do it over time if I add weight. And I'd say like that what's been the coolest part for me because it's just even learning that is like, hey, you can go around that. Like I said, I didn't barbell bench press for 2.5 years, just went straight dumbbells. That's how I got the form good. And then the second part, was I didn't squat for 5 years. I just went leg press, leg extensions.
Exactly. You
And I was
don't
like,
need it.
well,
It's
I
technically
couldn't do it at that time.
yeah. I mean, honestly, it's not although like with people, like, squats are great. Don't get me wrong, it builds up the body, but like it's not needed from a muscle building standpoint, from a strength building standpoint. If it doesn't feel good, then it's okay. It's totally fine. Like, since when are we in the gym for just like hitting the compounds and just like that? No, it's like we're in the gym to feel good, man, look good, progress and stuff. Like, doesn't need to be these specific exercises. Like I hate how I feel like social media and just like this everything like just the whole like gym like persona. I don't know. Everyone just thinks you need to be doing them, and it's not necessarily true. So
Well, I think I'm only speaking for me, but I
yeah.
would say it's because we think we should be further than where we are to an
Oh yeah.
extent.
Oh
So when
yeah.
like the squats for me, right? My thing is like, oh, I've been lean, but I was running 60 to 18 miles. So I've learned that with my body, like the way that right now I'm converting fat. I'm building muscle faster than I can lose the fat. So it's like, again, you got to know who you are. You got to know where you seek the improvement in. That's been frustrating. You know what I mean? Like when you look at my macros, they're on point. My body's changed. I have all these injuries, and it's funny because it's like time after time. It's like you got to know exactly who you are and not take anybody else's game plan or think, oh, I need to do these things. Or for me, it was like the squats, like, oh, I'm not going to look good enough, and it's like, well, you're not even at a point to where it's gonna matter. And then I
Yeah.
start, focusing on it, working on my squats, and I'm like, oh shit, dude, like I've literally went up 100 pounds. Like it takes time to do these things, but also to, you mentioned it earlier, was one intensity, the way we're moving, the way that we're actually doing full range of motion, because a lot of people don't do that, especially when we're talking about.
Most people don't do that, honestly. And it's not their fault though. It's not your fault. Like it's not a known thing. It's like mobility and full range of motion is not something that's actively put out there that much, to be honest. It's really not. So it's like you go to a public gym, like you looks like you go to a very serious gym, right? I go to very serious gyms. Like you do see folks that are training properly, but you go to a public gym, dude, it's like you don't. It's the average person's not training the full range of motion, and then they get hurt, and then they wonder what's going on, right? So most people don't, and that's the way it is. Unfortunately, that's where we come in. That's why we help, right? That's where we come in.
Exactly. Another thing I'll say,
Yeah.
can you touch on just using equipment wisely, brother? Because for me lately, I've been getting into lifting straps, wrist straps to make sure my wrists aren't hurting anymore.
Right.
And I noticed like with the lifting straps, those have been humbling as well, because I had a bad perspective originally where I was like, I don't need that. I can use chalk. And then it was not having the chalk and then doing back. And I'm like, bro, you don't even lift nearly as much weight as you think you can with the lifting strap, because you realize that when you isolate that muscle, um, it's a whole other feeling, different ball game. How
Yes.
important is it again, when we start using the tools to still stick to the great technique and focus on, hey, how do we be the best within that moment of that workout?
Yeah, so it really depends on goals too, because like for a while I went to like wrist wraps essentially, right, to help with like my wrists and stuff, and then eventually I wore them too much to where my wrist became weak. So it's like I definitely having a little bit of a balance of wearing it and not wearing it for something like that, and then for the wrist straps, which are for back exercises. Oh my God, dude, they're so helpful and they're a phenomenal tool. I think everyone should have them in their tool belt. Granted, like it's definitely important to build up that grip strength, but like towards the end of a back workout, you're fried, your grip's gone, and like you might still have some left in your back to get the energy out, whatever. So bringing in some straps could really help isolate that muscle group significantly more. And then there's the age old of like belt, no belt, all that jazz. I've actually talked about this on my Instagram a lot before. Belts are
Mhm.
fantastic, and I think they're great for experienced lifters to use as leverage to, of course, get more output with their legs. Because there's a point your core is just will not be able to handle it. But my argument to that is that I still think it's very, very, very important to make sure you learn how to build up a brace, both your back and your core properly before you completely utilize it. Because I see a lot of people, especially when they're new to the gym, is they'll just like, not even 6 months into lifting, they'll get a belt and then they'll only squat with the belt. And then it's like, well, you're shooting yourself a little bit in the foot because you're going to basically be just tightening that up as much as you humanly possibly can. It will feel like it's a brace, and it is bracing you, but then eventually your body will not be able to handle it anymore. And you're going to be folding and your forearm and your back's going to start hurting. Versus if you built up your brace first and then built it up, then when you introduced the belt, you'll be able to blast through any PR you've ever had in your life because your core is so strong. So I just think a lot of people just jump and skip that. So like I actually had a post about that on my Instagram, and it got blew up, and people were like, "Oh, screw you, dude! I can't believe you're saying no belt." I'm like, first off, you're all power lifters that are saying it, so it makes sense. Like all the power lifters, like take it very personally. I'm like, listen, that's not the point. It's like I'm talking new folks. Like, don't just get a belt and throw it on and stuff. But yeah, and then there's the knee sleeves and stuff like that. So that's like I'm just going down the body right now. But the knee sleeves, they're a fantastic tool, honestly. As someone that's had knee problems in the past, I do like keeping my knees very warm. And that's exactly what they do, is they just keep it very tight, warm. And then like at the bottom of a movement, like something, let's say a squat or a hack squat, there's just a little bit of like tension buildup that helps you kind of get out of that bottom position a little bit. It takes a little bit of like the pressure off your knees and kind of uses a little spring, just a tiny little bit. Like I'm not talking like it's going to be a world's different, but just a little bit extra support to get you out of the hole. And I've absolutely loved training with them. Like they've helped me so much. And now it's like my knees feel amazing with and without them. So that's been great that way. So, but yeah, I mean, there's so many tools. But I think basically like square one is if you are new to the gym, sub a year, do not touch anything, keep building up everything. And then as you get more experience, bring in things to help target specific muscles and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Bro, I loved it. And this is exactly why I'm asking it. Normally I don't. Normally I'm talking about the whys. Why are you losing weight? Why are you helping people?
Yeah.
But again, it goes into knowledge. You got to know who you're talking to, brother. That was the one video I seen with you that I loved. And the reason why I loved it as well is I did that where I was talking about, I went to a mastermind and I was doing
Yes.
push-ups and I was just busting out push-ups. And then they were looking at me and they're like, I hate this guy. And I'm like, do I have T-Rex arms? It's easy for me to do push-ups.
Right.
Yeah, like it's funny, like when we used to think about it, like, bro, push-ups isn't hard, but then you go to your body type. I'm short and stocky, I have T-Rex arms, easy to do push-ups,
Mhm.
versus like some other people may struggle,
I have
especially.
very long limbs, so I'm one of those guys that says screw this guy, man. Like straight up, like I have long limbs everywhere, so it's tough.
Exactly. So it was funny within that regard because when we're talking like bench press, I did a video one day and like people were pissed off at me. It was like power lifters were saying they're arching their back and they're getting it all up. And I said that I was like, you'll never see me fucking do that. You'll never see me arch my back like
Yeah, you have a
that.
very flat back.
Come
Yeah.
on, incline bench. You won't see me arch my back significantly. You have the slight arch, but I was like, I don't need to do that. That's not what's working for me. That's not how my form is.
You
Again,
also don't have a long torso. So if you think
exactly.
about it, right? So your arch won't even be, even if you are quote unquote arching, it's not going to appear as very big whatsoever because your torso is smaller, which is fine. But like someone that's taller, bigger, like I have a long torso, it's like, dude, my arch, like the arch just naturally happens, and I can't control it. Like when I'm trying to brace, it's just there. So yeah, exactly, man, exactly.
Boom. But I did the
Boom.
same thing. I said for who I am and
Yes.
how I work out. And
Mhm.
then people were attacking me. You can't fucking say that. You're not a power lifter. You don't understand. And I'm like, no, I do understand. I've lifted heavyweight. I've lifted 450 bench and been up there. I was like, even for that, for my body type, I didn't. What I have problems with is fucking, I used to flare the elbows, which will get my shoulders going. So now when I
Yep.
talk to clients, it's, hey, don't flare your elbows, keep the 45, break the 90s. So you have full range of motion. That's how I got my shoulders stronger. Hey, this is what you can do. And it's funny because you mentioned that as well. As like I was talking about the hundreds and I was pissed off the other day. And I'm like, just talking about it. Because again, it's like we think when you start performing heavier and heavier and heavier, you're like, this is my baseline. Now I'm down here, which to a normal person, you're above average. But to
You're a
us,
psycho. To be
we're
shoulder pressing 100 pounds is psychotic, dude. Do you understand that? That's a lot of weight to throw over your head. It's a lot
one
of
of my
weight, man.
buddies was getting on me, another fitness trainer, bodybuilder, and he's like, "Hey, man, you gotta say this." And it's like it's funny because even with it, and that's why I've leaned into it more. It's like start talking about the injuries, start talking about the hard shit, and it's like that's what's cool about having people who are as serious as what you do. Is like they'll come out and they're like, "Hey, man, like that is serious. You're doing well, dude. Like stop doing this." And in my head, I'm like, "No, I used to do more, blah blah blah." And it's like, "No,
You're
that's
always
not what
so
I'm
caught up the
doing."
used to or I'm not here, man. You're crushing it, man. That's fucking sick. You're crushing it. Be proud of it, man. Let me be your hype man. You be proud of it, dude.
My man, see, this is why I appreciate you, and this is
Yeah,
exactly why today, we tailored it to the actual physical element,
yeah,
which I don't do, is because people don't understand that, especially when you have somebody who puts out the content like you do, brother, where you're talking about, the movements, the way that you're in full range of motion, really training yourself is too. That's the other part, is people don't train themselves hard enough, and that's one reason why they're
yeah,
not growing. Besides eating, is they're not training hard enough. So when it comes to training hard, number one, and then it comes to the nutrition, I know people like I did have a lot of problems when it comes to the nutrition element and not knowing. And then also, with training as hard as they think like, oh, I can do this. And it's like, in theory, they're not even training themselves nearly as hard as they're supposed to.
yeah. It's interesting because it's a double-edged sword. Because it's like if they're not training harder, if they're training super hard, but you're not eating well, you're not going to see any results. Your recovery is going to be awful, and you're not going to put on any muscle. Versus, and then the same other way, it's like no matter how good you eat, whatever, if you're not training hard in the gym, you're still not going to put on muscle. So it's just like you got to have both to really see the results. And then obviously then there's training smart as well. But yeah, it's interesting like that.
Boom, brother. Man, you've been
Bravo.
amazing. You've been amazing today, brother. And I know
Yeah,
definitely we'll have a round two. So I really appreciate you, brother. I'll leave you
yeah,
with a
yeah,
last
yeah.
question to ask everybody. What would you say to that man who's starting at the beginning of the journey like we were? He's trying to align himself with his definition of success, but he doesn't know where to start.
Oof. Okay. First off, get a plan going. Even that's something online that you find, just like some, and I'm not talking go on TikTok and find a workout every single day. I'm talking like something that's structured. Find a structure because the longer you try to like figure it out and make decisions like and wing it, like it's gonna turn off for you. It's like you got to find some sort of structure, period. So that's one. Two, be real with yourself and how much time you actually have. I feel like everybody thinks that okay, I need to be in the gym for an hour and a half, 2 hours, be pumping out this much volume, but then like they don't have the time and they can only do 30 minutes of their workout and they feel like shit after because they only were able to finish a quarter of it and then they shoot themselves in the foot and they stop going, right? So it's like you got to be real with yourself and how much time you realistically have each and every day, and then also figure out how many days a week you can actually go, because if you can only fit in 2 or 3 days realistically, stop assuming that you need to be going 5. No, like settle on 2 or 3, find a workout program that utilizes 2 to 3 days, go for 30, 45 minutes, and then just start. And then like just like focus on like full range of motion. Don't worry about flinging a ton of weight around and just being in control and understand what you're actually doing. If you start that way, oh my God, man, by the time you start moving the weight and you start going more, it's you're gonna have the best base ever. Like I feel like we might have like started out way too hard, flinging a weight around. Like I mean, I was lifting quote unquote more weight 2 years ago, right? Like quote unquote, right, 3 years ago. But like it wasn't with good form. It was like a lot of ego lifting. I was getting hurt, whatever. And now it's like I move the same weight a little bit more, but man, the weight's controlled and all that stuff. So it's like if I started with that and
And then you
eased
lift a
into it, dude, I'd be so much stronger now. I'd be like, everything would be so much better. So it's like just ease into it, man, and find something that you can actually sustain. Stop thinking that you need to go for 2 hours a day, 2 hours a day, 6 times a week. Like that's total bullshit, man. Like if you're especially a man with like you have a family. Imagine like you have a family, you're busy, you're working, and you weren't in the gym. Do you really think you could off rip right now, just start going to the gym as much as you do? Probably not. Like Alfred, if you've never worked out, dude, just start 2 or 3 days a week for 30 minutes. Get in, get out, you know? Like it does not need to be super complicated. And like that's what kind of like what I preach with my clients, man. It's like I have some people that one has this one guy, dude, he has twins. He's trying to grow a business on the side and he has a full 9 to 5. And so he's busy as all hell. And I'm like, dude, can you just give me 25, 30 minutes hard? And he's like, yes. And he's doing it 3 times a week. And then he goes for walks on the other days. And the guy's seeing results because and then if nutrition's in place and everything's good. But like he's never lifted like this before. So he's seeing results, right? And he's sustaining it and he's fired up that he's actually crushing it. And he is. But he's not over there comparing, oh, this guy's doing 6 days a week, and this guy's doing, for 2 hours. It's like, no, he's just like, he's happy with where he's at and he's crushing it. So do something like that.
Yeah. Bro, that's powerful. And that's something that people don't understand, as you think they need to be in there for so long. Yeah. And then also too, it's funny, it's like we think when we're going frequently, we need so much volume. And then when you actually start doing the volume and you realize it's not the way.
You don't need that much, dude.
Yeah. And then you're like, what? And that was something for me was like volume training I loved, but I didn't like 2 days on, 1 day off. So it was funny because it's like, if I have that client, I can teach him exactly that. And I'm like, hey, this may work for you. It worked for me. I had results. But again, it was preference. It was what works for me. And I was like, I don't kind of like HIIT, doing CrossFit. Love it, can do it. But with my injuries and everything, you're not going to see me doing it because it's just not going to be healthy for the long-term sustainability. And I love the way you said that because people don't, piece it as we think, oh, I have this game plan. I do this. And it's funny. It's like, no, that's not what we're going to be doing. And even the other day, I joined Terrence Ruffin put his program out, and he has a new one where like he's helping influencers,
cool.
fitness trainers. And it was funny because like even look at it, all his movements, it's like typical of what we're already doing,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Like, it's just little tweaks of like, hey, this is how you could take your level to the next game.
I actually I followed, so his coach is the hypertrophy coach guy who brought up the circle method. His coach is hypertrophy coach, and so I ran his program for like 2 years, and that's where I learned all this stuff, and that's where I learned so much. Like I was just eating up the information that he was pouring into the program because it's freaking awesome. So that's super cool. So yeah, literally, dude, it's like what he's doing is not special. It's not some like rocket science stuff. It's not an insane amount of volume. He's just very efficient with his exercises, and he's very methodical and purposeful with what he does. Because as a guy that's a bodybuilder like that, he's like, okay, I want to build up this part of my shoulder or this, like, the upper chest. He's going to do specific exercises to target that, right? So he's very methodical with what he does. But yeah, that's super cool, man. That's awesome that you're doing that.
Yeah, brother. I checked his stuff out because I seen it. I've been following him, and I always loved his physique. And then it was funny because like I really didn't start doing that until I started getting into knees over toes guy.
Oh yeah, knees over toes, yeah.
Because of all the injuries. And it was funny because it's like I noticed typically, when you're talking to people, it's the same thing over and over again. Where they're like, yeah, I've been doing this, walk on the treadmill. And for me, it was like, hey, I have to have all those tools because again, how am I going to help that client who struggles like I did? And then instead, bitches out like I did at one point in time. And it's like, well, I don't need to go to the gym if I have all these injuries. I don't need to do legs if I can't do it. And it's like, nah, you still do legs, even if you can't. You just do it at what you can do.
Exactly. Just doing something is better than nothing. Seriously, people like it doesn't need to be 0 or 100. Okay, it does not. That's not how the work works with anything. It's like if you're feeling sick, you're tired of a day. Are you just going to stop working? Are you going to stop doing absolutely everything? You're just going to low down for the day? Probably not. Same thing with the gym, dude. It's like if you're not feeling, granted, if you feel like absolute dog shit, don't go to the gym. But if like you're just not feeling up for it, or your legs are like, if you have an injury, just do the best you simply can. Like if your knees are cooked or if your ankles are like something's going on, dude, then there's so many exercises to hit legs to isolate just the quad or the hamstrings. That's why there's the leg extension. That's why there's the leg curl, like all that stuff. So yeah. I'm blabbering on. Sorry.
No, you hit it huge, brother. And again, we can keep going forever, but we'll do a round 2. Thank you again, brother.
Yeah. I'm stoked, man. This is great.
Just the knowledge behind it, because I know that's something that people, lack, is the people being real with it, talking about form. So really appreciate you coming on today, brother. People find you, Jack, if they want to keep up with you, brother.
So you can find me on Instagram at Sorenson Fit, SORENSON Fit. Or you can find me on YouTube, which is Sorenson Fitness. I'm trying to do as much as I can on there and put some more content out. So follow and check them out. That'd be awesome. And
Boom, brother.
message me if you message me if you found me through this. That'd be super cool. That'd be like a really cool like full circle of that thing. So
There you go. Just like your training method, brother. So we'll definitely send people your way. Thank you again, brother. You've been an amazing today, gentleman and scholar. So I can't thank you enough, with just the amount of knowledge, volume, value you gave out. There's not many people are like that. So thank you again, brother.
appreciate it, dude. This is fantastic.